President Donald Trump just wrapped up his State of the Union address, a wide-ranging speech that spanned almost 2 hours. Of course, the president covered a lot of ground in that address, but here are some of the early takeaways. We know that Americans, one of the big things that they've been watching for in this speech are the president's remarks on the economy and the cost of living. The president touted what he called a stunning economic turnaround in this speech. He talked about a range of policies from his recently passed tax cuts to initiatives aimed at lowering prescription drug costs. And in a newly announced effort that's aimed at taming energy prices, the president said that tech companies involved in artificial intelligence have now agreed to provide for their own power needs in areas where data centers are located. Now, President Trump also addressed a major recent setback for his economic agenda, that Supreme Court decision just last week that struck down a big portion of his global tariffs. In this speech, President Trump vowed to continue those tariffs using other legal strategies, and he called the ruling unfortunate, but did refrain from personally insulting the Supreme Court justices who were sitting in the crowd right in front of him during this address. Now, of course, the big question moving forward is going to be whether this message resonates with American voters during a midterm election year that's expected to be largely focused on affordability, as polls show that many Americans remain deeply concerned about cost of living issues and the president's handling of the economy. Another topic we are watching going into tonight is this issue of immigration. This is a subject where President Trump and his administration has been under a lot of scrutiny lately, but we didn't really see a major shift in President Trump's messaging on this. He reiterated a lot of his longstanding talking points, celebrating his shutdown of the southern border and his mass deportation campaign. He also called on members of Congress to pass legislation that would ban undocumented immigrants from obtaining commercial driver's licenses, and he also called for a crackdown on sanctuary cities. And amid this partial government shutdown that is ongoing, the president also called on Democrats to restore funding for the Department of Homeland Security. That message coming just hours after an effort to restore that DHS funding had failed to advance in the Senate. Now, remember, Democrats here are calling for a range of new restrictions on immigration enforcement before restoring that funding. They say it's gotten way out of control, but those reforms are not something that we heard President Trump talk about directly in this speech tonight. Now, Democrats protested these remarks in a range of ways. In fact, just moments into the speech, we saw Democratic Congressman Al Green, who was also kicked out of the address last year, led out of the chamber while he held up a sign in protest. There were also other tense moments in this address where Democrats shouted back at the president, others sat silently in resistance, and Democrats also showed their pushback through the guests that they brought to this address. Some who they say were hurt by the president's immigration crackdown, and they also brought survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's sexual abuse as they call for more transparency around the Epstein files. And some Democrats boycotted this speech altogether tonight and instead attended a protest rally that happened on the National Mall earlier this evening. Now, all that said, it was not all about division tonight. There were some rare moments of bipartisan applause during the speech, probably the loudest of which happened when the president called out members of the gold medal winning USA men's hockey team. The president saying that he would give the Presidential Medal of Freedom to the goalie of that team. And another rare moment of bipartisan applause came when the president expressed support for legislation that would ban lawmakers from stock trading based on insider information. It remains to be seen now if those comments will give that bill some momentum in the coming days.